Oh, hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today, we're exploring the intersection of vascular health and brain function with James Maskell, co founder of Truneura. After witnessing innovative treatments to help his own father, James partnered with Dr. Christine Burke to pioneer personalized medicine approaches for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. During the show, we're going to discover how arterial buildup restricts critical blood flow to the brain and how Truneura's precision medicine approach is creating new possibilities for those experiencing cognitive decline. James will also give us an exclusive preview of the upcoming Alzheimer's Summit starting this Tuesday, where leading experts will share the latest advances in cognitive health. And while Alzheimer's and dementia remain challenging conditions, these emerging approaches truly do offer new hope for millions of families affected worldwide. And so I really look forward to what we learned today from James Maskell and hear more about Truneura. Right, Dr. Phillips?
Indeed. Kim, happy Saturday. Hope you're doing well.
Happy Saturday. You're not in your normal gigs over there.
No, I'm
Got
not.
a
I'm
different
actually
backdrop.
a different backdrop. I never thought I would be sitting in a student union again, but I'm on campus at Ohio State University. Through my game day men's health clinic hat, we are sponsoring and participating in a mental health awareness summit at on campus, and just got done listening to a couple of coaches within the Ohio State University talk about their mental health issues, and it's really sobering. And it's certainly a health crisis that we need to get our arms around. And I know before we went online, we were talking about making America healthy again, and we've got to make our bodies healthy and our minds healthy as well. But nonetheless, I am really excited to speak with James. Uh, Alzheimer's is a horrific disease, and it's devastating to see a loved one go through something like that. So if there's any hope of a cure or getting people better, I'm all ears.
I think we should get this conversation started, but first, a moment of inspiration.
Dr. John Phillips' spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
Well, Kim, I was going to start off with a little bit of a moment of inspiration, or at least a quote from our new Pope Leo the 14th. And he said that in his opening statement when he was looking out over the throngs of people at the Vatican, God loves all of us and evil will not prevail. So I said, great, that's inspirational. But sitting in this mental health summit and listening to some speakers, and one of whom is the head coach of the OSU wrestling team, and he was talking about his struggles with depression and anxiety. He really said something I thought that was profound. That he focuses on these small little micro wins, and winning something small each day continues to build on your inner strength. And the old adage of making your bed in the morning, it seems simple and it's an easy task, but it means a lot because that's a small victory. So my words of inspiration are to try to get folks to have a small win that can then add to cumulative large wins in our lives.
That is so beautiful. If you remember legendary Harlem Globetrotter Larry Shorty Coleman, who has been on our show a number of times, he's a peripheral artery disease patient and amputee. And if you recall, in our Save My Piggies conference, he said that the one little win that he has every single morning that gets his day started is the fact that he just opens his eyes.
Mm.
And he said,
That,
every morning, if I open my eyes, I actually say, thank you, God. I have my eyes open and I can see. And he said that starts off his day with one win. And he said it just gets better and better and better throughout the day. Okay, so I was able to sit up. That's another win. I was able to put my prosthetic on. Another win. And it may seem cheesy, but it's incredible how these little wins do, in fact, build if you'll just entertain the idea.
yeah. I mean, it's the wrestling coach shared a little story with us was when and I'm paraphrasing it because this just happened like 30 minutes ago, but basically he had a full ride to Syracuse, but he wanted to leave Syracuse as a sophomore and go wrestle in Iowa. So he drives to Iowa and he meets the head coach and he says, I want to wrestle for you. And the coach says, okay, go wrestle these two brothers who evidently must have been beasts. And he just got his butt whipped day after day. And then, but he said, what kept me going was, okay, the first day they took me down 30 times. Well, the second day it was only 20. And then the third day I actually touched the guy's leg. And the fourth day I maybe got a takedown. I mean, it was just like he's getting killed, but he's finding the positive things in this kind of destruction of his what he thought of his ego as a good wrestler, but that got him through it. And I think it's the small wins that ultimately lead to big wins that keep us sustained.
I could imagine that this mindset is critical for a startup such as what James Maskell is working on with Truneura. It's really an uphill battle, isn't it, James? And it's those little wins along the way that keep moving you forward.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's one thing to start to make some progress. It's another thing to sustain that progress over decades, which is obviously what you want to do. And so, so much of the journey to get better and stay better is in the mind. It's psychosocial in nature as opposed to, biochemical. And that's a critical part to solving chronic illness.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to talk to James Maskell more about how he is tackling one of the biggest issues facing Americans as they get older. And in fact, our global population as they age, it is cognitive decline, particularly with Alzheimer's, but we're also touching on dementia as well. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
How many procedures are you willing to go through? Is it worth going through that many, or would you rather just step
That's funny. Was it worth it? Oh yeah, I have my leg, man.
Amputation should absolutely, positively, 100% never be a first-line treatment.
What an incredible operation, what an incredible lab you have here. Without a doubt, we're underdiagnosing peripheral arterial disease. It has not gotten the attention that it should because it is a killing disease, it is a disabling disease, and most importantly, it's a disease that we now have great treatments for. Okay, let's go to the next one.
They were going to amputate it, and I needed to consult with my family. Did I want it off here or here? You're just shocked. It's scary. I don't even know how to explain it. You're 42 years old.
We're waiting till people are at the end of the spectrum and almost beyond hope. There is good care available here. Closed minds are what we have to get rid of.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. It is a beautiful Saturday in Columbus, Ohio. And Kym, I trust it's beautiful out west. James, thanks for joining us. So James, let's jump right into the conversation. What is Truneura and why did you partner with Dr. Burke and decide to kind of start this program or method?
Yeah, so in December 2023, I got a message from South Africa, where my father lives, that my father had a health catastrophe and I needed to get over there as quickly as possible. And he was in a friend's bedroom. He'd collapsed at lunch and no one really knew what was going on, but it looked like death. So it's literally the other side of the world from California. So I spoke to my doctor, Dr. Christine Burke, who I knew is one of the foremost leaders in the sort of precision medicine approach to Alzheimer's. She's got exceptional improvements in MoCA scores documented. She's part of a clinical trial, the Dementia Reversal Trial, which is dementiareversaltrial.com. She's one of the trial sites for it. And I just asked her, what do you think? And she said, I told her just a little bit about the story from across the world. And she said, if the cognitive decline is that rapid, it's always an infection. So when you go, ask about the blood work, look for an infection. If it's not an infection, go to his house and see if it's moldy, because that can trigger it as well. And, obviously most people experience cognitive decline as something slow over a long period of time, right? So this was just very specific to something that was that rapid, that went from not being able to remember the PIN number to basically being in bed. So I arrived there and see my dad, and, looks very close to death. I mean, lying, not eyes opening, breathing, but not responding in any way. And speak to the doctor and not really sure what's going on. They're sort of saying, hey, prepare for death. This is what death looks like. And I got in his car and I drove over to his flat. And as soon as I walked in, I realized it was super moldy. It was black mold was everywhere. And it had been a really wet spring in Cape Town because December is, the end of spring. And I just started thinking back to all these conversations I've had with him where he's like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm going to stay in bed today and feeling lethargic and I can't get out. And so I went back and I was like, I think this is probably what's causing it. And at that moment, every doctor, everyone around was looking at me like I had two heads. Like they had no idea that this could even be possible. They just thought that it was death. And I got on with doing what, a son and only child would do. So, looking to sell the flat, move out. Some friends of ours who live by the ocean said, why don't you come and just spend the last few days with your dad at our house? So we got in an ambulance, took him in an ambulance, took him to that house and started to spend some time with him. And a couple days in, the lights just started to turn on a little bit. And then a couple days more, he was able to sit up and be in the wheelchair. And, it was just obvious at that moment that Dr. Burke was right. And that ultimately there had been essentially an acute mold poisoning that he was experiencing. And as he got into fresh air and the body started to adjust and was in a different environment, so, the lights started to turn back on. Fast forward 6 months, he's in full-time care because he lost a lot of muscle mass, but was reading 3 or 4 books a week. I could, be in touch with him on the WhatsApp. But coming back from that trip, I just was like, how did Dr. Burke know from across the world without ever having seen him that this could be what it was? And how did no one else down there know when there's really good doctors, in the area? So that was the initial moment where I was like, we got to do something about this. We got to spread the word. We got to help, any physician really understand what can be the different drivers of cognitive decline. And then how do you determine which one is driving it in this specific patient? And I think we could save a lot of unnecessary suffering if we understood that.
So are we talking about merely acute that you're tackling, or are we talking about chronic and long-term?
Well, this just happened to be, what happened in my father's case. In most cases, you're dealing with a range of different issues. It's never really one thing. Dr. Burke as I've learned a lot over the last year and a half. Typically, it's a combination of factors. So you may have heard people would say, there are studies saying like Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes. Now, certainly metabolic inflammation can play a role in how diabetes manifests, but it's not only that thing. There are many other different reasons. There's vascular, there's hormonal and trophic reasons, there's biotoxins like I just shared with my father. There could be chemical toxins. I don't know if you just saw 2 days ago, there was a study that showed you're 3 times more likely to get Parkinson's if you live near a golf course. So, there are pesticides in the environment that are playing a role in these kind of things. So then the key thing is, how do you understand what is happening in this patient in front of you and what has created the environment by which that the cognitive decline has begun? And that's really the focus of precision medicine, not about what the end result is, but how we got there.
So James, this idea was obviously born about because an acute illness happened with your father. But do you, as your journey has taken place, do you guys find that just physicians, primary care physicians, or neurologists for that matter, just don't have the time to kind of dive into each individual patient? Or I guess what's the driver, and how do you convince a board certified ex-physician that they need your services? Or are you trying to get to the patient?
No, we're trying to work through the practitioners. I mean, look, the sad truth is, for the last 20 years, all of the Alzheimer's research has been based on a faulty hypothesis, which was actually fraud. You can read about it in the New York Times or otherwise, but the end point that has been solely focused on has been the beta-amyloid plaque. And so all of the research for the last 20 years has focused on, the beta-amyloid plaque, why it arrives and what it does in the brain. And ultimately in the last, couple of years, it's been clear that that's actually not the cause of Alzheimer's, but that is just something that's happening at the same time and a cofactor. And so ultimately, there's not a lot of things that work. If you look at all of the standard of care, if you compare not doing anything, then your MoCA score will go down by 4 points. I mean, this is getting technical, but you're going to get worse. All the standard of care drugs, there's a couple of monoclonal antibodies. It slows the progression downwards. Nothing until precision medicine made it go back up. No drug ever had made it go back up to actually get your get your cognitive function back. And Dr. Burke and a couple of her colleagues are now responsible for dozens of people in the state of California getting their driver's license back, as an example, where you've lost it because of your cognitive impairment and then getting it back. So we're standing at the edge of a new dawn where this has not been possible, and neurologists know that it hasn't been possible either. So there is a lot of interest in this area because things are happening that have never happened before.
So in the people that you've dealt with so far with Dr. Burke and the ones that you have seen the greatest improvements in terms of their cognitive impairment, what were some of the driving factors? Were there any commonalities between them that, would make you think, oh my goodness, it's not medicine we need changes in their environment. We need changes in their behavior. We need changes even in their diet.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Look, another guy who has seen effective, who's seen outcomes, and this came out last year in the news, was Dean Ornish, right? Who is a cardiologist, and he has shown, in 20 weeks, the ability to improve cognitive decline through an aggressive lifestyle intervention. So there's, the way that you eat, the way that you move, the way that you interact with others, that has proof in the short term. What Dr. Burke would say is that you need that as a foundation. You need to really activate people into doing healthy things consistently with how they eat and how they take care of themselves. But if you don't deal with the underlying drivers of what's happening in that specific patient, you can get short-term benefit, but then you're still on the long-term trajectory. And the most exciting thing is where you can get a long-term movement back in the other direction. And that is what is possible now. It hasn't been easy. It's been very intellectually taxing and rigorous, and it takes a lot of time. And that's why the only clinics are doing it are in the sort of precision functional concierge medicine space. And our dream with Truneura is that it could be used by any neurologist, even any senior center, assisted living, memory care could use the software to make it much easier to understand what's going on with this person and help them on their journey back.
So you're taking something that used to be, or is in many cases, hours and hours of interviewing with the patient to really get a handle on who this patient is holistically. And you've been able to take the learnings, right, of what were the most impactful moments of that 1 to 2 hour journey that a physician would have, a practitioner would have with their patient. And you've literally just lumped it all into one piece of software, in a sense, or a platform that would democratize access and also, package it to make it much easier, maybe 2 hours now into 15, 20 minutes with the patient. So what are the elements of this software that allow a practitioner to get a handle on cognitive decline?
It's a great tease, I believe, because we've got to go to break. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Your type of condition is called critical limb ischemia. It's the most advanced form of PAD, or peripheral arterial disease.
Every 4 minutes, there is an amputation in this country due to PAD and diabetes. We also know that 85% of these amputations are preventable with early intervention.
It's a flip of the coin. Patient prognosis is tied to whether or not they are referred to a true expert in the management of peripheral arterial disease.
Do you know if your physician is an experienced CLI operator?
When you're in the hospital dealing with doctors and stuff, you figure they know what they're talking about.
The skill level varies doctor from doctor and hospital to hospital.
Patients with limb threat are in constant fear. The depression that someone experiences after they lose a limb is equivalent to those of losing their spouse of 40 years.
I was stuck in a wheelchair close to 2 years and my husband had to quit work.
I didn't know what to do at this point because we had had nothing but infections and hospital stays and infections and hospital stays.
And they took one toe, another toe, and then it was another toe, and then half his foot before he was even diagnosed with PAD.
And all I heard was, "What are we doing here? Just cut it off." And I pulled the curtain back like, "Are you kidding me?"
Do you really want to go through all that?
That's crazy. That's insane. The protocol is to send them to amputation. Always, always, always get multiple opinions.
We do have options.
We need to listen more to our patients.
If you're going to chop off their leg anyway, why not just let someone else try?
This is the progression. First comes the wounds, and then comes an amputation. And I wasn't going to accept that.
So that's what it's like to try to save a leg.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
And I would assume you would probably want to be going to Truneura.com as well after this segment because it's so incredibly fascinating. We have co-founder of Truneura, we have James Maskell, who is here, and he is talking about innovation in cognitive decline. And his company has developed a platform that is going to democratize access to this innovation. And before the break, we were talking about all of the hours that doctors had to spend with their patients in order to understand what may be causing the cognitive decline, whether it's environmental factors, whether it's diet, whether it's lack of exercise, whatever it may be, whatever they're exposed to that may be causing the cognitive decline. But now Truneura has literally just bundled that into one platform. And I'm curious, James, from your perspective, what are the key elements that you've been able to package that will help with practitioners to diagnose the reason for cognitive decline in a matter of a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, there's two areas we mentioned just before the break. The patient has to participate. And so ultimately understanding where the most leverage is for the patient, this patient in front of you, where can they get the most health back across lifestyle, psychosocial and environmental areas. That's one piece. But the big innovation in the software is really about the data management for the clinician. Now, this innovation has come from a medical world and concierge medicine and precision medicine where there is less there's more time available to spend with the patient and really understand their history and go deep into all of that. But also there's a lot of inbound data that has to come in because there are, in our mind, there are 6 drivers of cognitive decline. There's metabolic inflammation that I mentioned before, so blood sugar regulation, liver function, etc. There's nutrients and mitochondrial function, so energy production, cell integrity. There's hormonal and trophic factors, so thyroid and sex hormones, BDNF, muscle mass. There's cardiovascular, so blood vessel health, vascular inflammation, lipids, cholesterol, kidney function. There could be biome and biotoxins like my father, so that looks at chronic infections, mold, mycotoxins, and then there could be chemical toxins like the pesticides. So in order to understand what's going on in this patient, you would need to gather data on all of these. And what would that look like for being a doctor? It would look like having 18 PDFs on your desk and looking through all of them and trying to work out what is the theme here? Like, what is the theme? What is happening? And that's not easy to do. It's actually very intellectually rigorous, intellectually taxing, and time consuming. And Dr. Burke had essentially created like a spreadsheet to have her as medical assistant get it all into one spreadsheet so that she could just see it in one thing rather than 18 PDFs. And that was the V1 of the innovation. And now we're on V5 of the innovation. And part of it is that each data point is scored between 0 and 100. So, doctors will know that each lab value has its own reference range, has its own optimal range, and different units, and you have to learn all of that. Essentially what our system does is to score every one of those labs. So 100 is perfect and 0 is extremely problematic, and you get a score for each one of these lab markers, and then you can combine those scores in useful ways so that the doctor can in a very easy view with all the lab data being ingested, say the main thing that is driving your cognitive decline is metabolic inflammation, and here's what we're going to do to help you in the next 30 days. And that is, it's really a data management and a time management business.
So James, we've got 2 minutes left, and we can probably continue this on in the next segment. But before we went to break, we kind of talked about the notion of turning the gas off for the cognitive decline. And the reference I used is it's slow and insidious. At 100 degrees Celsius, water boils. It doesn't boil at 99, but once it starts at 100, like, you're off into the races. So, like, for me, I'm 49 years old. I hopefully don't have any cognitive decline yet, but like with coronary disease, it's a progressive process, and we're trying to get ahead of it with, reducing people's cholesterol and things of that nature. Am I somebody that could go through this workup, or do you wait until someone has shown cognitive decline to do the workup?
Well, the research shows that these, the underlying pathology that leads to cognitive decline can start 30 years before you have symptoms. So ultimately, most people are only motivated to do something about anything when they have a symptom, but our dream here is to start at your age and earlier. I'm 44. I should be doing it as well. I mean, my father's suffered with it, my grandfather, my grandmother. So, ultimately our goal is that eventually it would get earlier and earlier, and we'll see the benefit both to costs and human suffering by getting everyone in their 40s to start to understand their own physiology.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to get to the heart of the cost of the matters. That and more. We have some questions that are coming in from YouTube and Facebook and all of the above. So we're going to get to those as well. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
I had a partner when I was much younger. I had finished my cardiology training, and now I was a cardiologist practicing. I had been in practice for about 3 years, and I had a partner who was about 15 years older than me. So he had been practicing for almost 20 years. And we were in the hospital together. We were working in a very big, busy hospital. And he came up to me once and he asked a question about a patient that he was taking care of. And I do remember the moment, because when he asked the question, I do remember saying to myself, man, that was a really basic question. Like, shouldn't he already know that? So I answered the question, and he walked down the hallway, turned the corner, and then he came back to me. And he said, hey, listen, I know that was a really stupid and simple question, but really and truly, I don't want to make a mistake with this patient. And he walked off. And that night, his name was Tom Kelly. I called him up. I said, hey, Tom, did I say something to offend you? And he said, hey, yeah, you actually offended me because, I came to you with a question, and I was looking for your advice, and just your body language, your facial expression, you kind of made me feel dumb, and that's a moment that has always resonated with me in regards to people and how I interface with people and patients, right? People remember how you make them feel. And when you are doing good work with folks and trying to get things done, you want people to feel included and part of the process. When you're in front of patients, you want them to feel listened to. So I would say that moment is sort of really defined my career. Tom Kelly actually eventually died of brain cancer. And in his final days, when I was visiting with him, I told him how much that changed my life.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So, James, let's continue the conversation. Let's pretend I want to get some testing done to help slow this process. What testing would you recommend for me? And maybe if you just focused on two of the columns or that you had spoke on.
Yeah, so if the first step that you would go when you went into a clinic that was using Truneura is you probably would work with someone in sort of a nutrition health coach kind of a role, and that's because we've identified like lifestyle, psychosocial, and environmental pillars, and we want to understand how you're doing in those areas and then supporting you ongoing. There's some cool things in the software with that allow your wearables to be connected to it, so we can actually see if that health coach would say, "Hey, John, it's really important for you. You're not sleeping enough. Sleep is a critical part in the cleaning of the brain at night, and so we're going to recommend that you sleep 8 hours a night." Your Aura Ring could automatically tell them whether or not that's happening. So the first step is to really see how you're doing on the things that are in your sort of realm of responsibility, your locus of control. But then, ultimately, you could start to do some testing for understanding the root causes. Now, there's some interesting innovation in testing that's happening right now. So there's a new blood-based biomarker called p-tau217, p-tau217, and now for the first time, that is a marker that can actually tell you how far along this journey towards getting dementia am I? So, that's something that, someone in their 40s like myself or yourself could be doing, every quarter. And that's, very cost-effective way to really understand, is this process starting for me? Ultimately, the software is capable enough that if you did, 100 tests, like there's on the market today in the consumer space, there's all hundreds of new companies that are essentially like making it easier for normal people to test a lot of biomarkers. So you could do something like that with that information. Ultimately, in our system, there's 450 biomarkers that have been organized and scored. But whether you do 10 or 100 or 450, the only thing you're going to get is more accurate the more data that you have. But as a cardiologist, there will be a range of tests. So Cleveland Heart Lab is one of the labs that we use there. That is a lab test that is payable by Medicare, payable by Medicaid. Commercial insurance typically pays for it. So typically it's not an out-of-pocket expense for patients. But with that information, you can get a very comprehensive understanding of, is my cardio and vascular health playing a role in my brain health, and ultimately we are helping clinicians to communicate that and to understand that. Interesting, and I was excited to connect with you on this because Dr. Burke was actually a vascular specialist. So she's internal medicine and she was a vascular specialist, and that was her work. And then she started to realize, as the new science started to come out, that the blood-brain barrier is actually vascular tissue, and actually being a vascular specialist is extremely helpful for the brain because it's really just one barrier: the blood-brain barrier, the endothelial glycocalyx, the gut tube. She really started to see that this was all one barrier, and protecting the barrier is what she had been doing as a vascular specialist, and this is just a different barrier with essentially the same tissue.
That's probably music to your ears. Something that Dr. Phillips would definitely align with, and it's resonating with him.
Yeah, I'm nodding a lot. I mean, again, I think it just speaks to the notion of knowing early and being aggressive in a proactive manner with getting yourself healthy, mind, body, soul, whatever.
So this is something that we have a lot of patients here that are vascular and cardiovascular patients, and Hind is putting here in the chat that he wants to know, are these literally tests that doctors are going to order for a cardiovascular and vascular patient? Is it something that a patient can advocate for now and say, hey, I want this dementia test because I have peripheral artery disease and cardiovascular disease. I want to know if I'm at risk for dementia right now. And then, also along with it, then the doctor's going to say, well, what are you going to do with these results? Well, what would you do with that result that would come back and say, yes, you are at risk, or you are showing early signs of dementia?
Yeah, ultimately, I think if you were to, I think advocating for yourself to have the p-tau217 test is a good idea. And if it came down that you were in the process of developing dementia, great opportunity, even more reason to aggressively go after the lifestyle things that you have advocated for on this show.
And coming up right here on The Heart of Innovation, we'll have final thoughts from James Maskell with Truneura, and you'll find out where you can learn more about the upcoming Alzheimer's Summit that is happening online virtually. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
When your sugar runs high, it's more than a sign. Diabetes creeping in, it's a dangerous line. Pre-diabetes too, don't think it's too light. It can lead to PATS, so start the fight. Sugar's sweet, but the cost is real. High blood sugar makes your arteries feel clogged. Slow flow, it's a ticking time bomb. Catch it early, stay strong, and keep your legs on. Sugar's not so sweet when your leg is in pain. Not controlling sugar is where peripheral artery disease sets in. Got sugar? Get checked. Don't wait too late. Save your legs, save your life, take control of your fate. Leg pain, cold feet, neuropathy too. These are signs diabetes caught you. High sugar's the link for circulation and pain. Left untreated, your leg might end in flame.
Please forgive me, folks. I'm trying to stop my laughing because Kym during the break just reminded me that we're part of the #1 women ranked innovation podcast in the country. And I'm just so pleased to be a part of that. But it just makes me laugh because remember you told me that I needed to wear a wig. Anyway, let's get back with James. James, we've got 4 minutes left. Tell me a little bit about the Alzheimer's Summit and how we can learn more about that.
Yeah, so we wanted to create a place where anyone in the world for free could come and learn about all of these concepts, understand it for themselves, take action, understand the tests, understand the innovations, understand, these new areas. I mean, I've said just off the cuff, like, hey, Parkinson's and living near a golf course, but you want to go deeper into toxins and understand that. We've got to talk on microplastics and some of the science that's coming around that. It's if you go to drtalks.com, so drtalks.com/summit/Alzheimer's. It starts on Tuesday. It goes for 5 days. It's totally free. You can listen to 30 different leaders in the field talking about all the different elements from lifestyle to all the different root causes that we've spoken about. Dr. Burke is one of the interviewers. I'm one of the interviewers. There's Dr. Robert Love is the third interviewer. He's got about 5 million followers on social media. He talks about this stuff all day, every day on social media, and is sort of an encyclopedic knowledge of all things Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's prevention and reversal. So, whether or not you, and ultimately, we hope that you can come and learn something and start to play a role in your own prevention and also for the people around you.
Are you expecting any sort of, in a sense, breaking news coming out of this particular conference?
Well, look, there's a lot of innovation happening in this space right now. So there's new tests to understand. There's new science that will be shared. I think, I mentioned the microplastics thing. I mean, that is something that is coming into its own this year. It's in all the news and people really starting to understand the amount of plastic that is ending up in people's brains, where it comes from. And particularly in that talk, there's some really easy starting points on how to avoid leaching plastic into your food and your drink. And you can see me here with my glass water bottle. When you do those interviews and you learn those kind of things, you take some drastic action as a result.
Is it too late for some of us, James? Microplastics. Never too late, good.
Especially for someone as sharp as you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, with this summit that people are actually going to attend, there are going to be some tangible takeaways such as that they'll be able to walk away with.
Yeah, tons of tangible takeaways. Each day, there's a number of really cool talks. There will be a replay weekend, so you can watch it next week live, sort of Tuesday through Saturday. Then the following weekend of the holiday weekend, we're going to do it again. You can watch them all for free that weekend. And yeah, ultimately the goal is just to help people really understand what they can do to take care of their own brain and how they can understand what's the highest leverage actions that they can take and just stay in the mix as this topic continues to move forward.
Well, we really appreciate you being here, James. James Maskell, he is the co-founder of Truneura. Make sure you go to, it's drtalks.com/summit/Alzheimer's.
You've been listening to The Heart of Innovation with Emmy Award-winning journalist Kym McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
You have leg cramps that stop you in your tracks, aching and tightening that always comes back. It could be your arteries signaling something's wrong. Let's dive into this journey, come along. Walking down the street, feel the birds let in. Simple strolls turning into fights within. Don't ignore the signs, your body's playing loud. Time to act now, stand up and be proud. Peripheral